so everybody knows we do record these things. I'll try to keep the cussing to a minimum, but I'm kind of bad at that. So if you want to let something fly, go for it. It's not going to hurt anybody's feelings. We'll just give it a couple more minutes and let Teresa Clark finish signing in, and then we'll start fielding questions. I actually had Jason Calvi already push a couple, so he would like to talk about carb loading and how training should look the week of a triathlon. So we'll touch on those briefly at some point. I feel like I've just got wildlife bouncing around me. Hi, Teresa.
Hi, I'm going to keep it on mute because of animals, and my husband's mowing the lawn right outside my window.
Okay.
But I'll come in as needed.
All right. Well, does anybody have a question that they would like to throw out there that we can get started with?
Wait, hold on. Are we not going to recognize Val's kitty?
I didn't see it. I've been messed up.
Oh my gosh.
I've got a snuggle buddy too.
Oh.
And thank goodness I was wearing pants when I just did that. Huh? Gotta think about that. All right, so who wants to throw a question out there?
I have a question.
Okay, go for it.
Can you hear me okay? First of all, this is my first official Zoom meeting. So the tri-race season in this region of the country, does it normally fit between certain months of the year?
Yes.
Okay.
We typically have a spring season and a fall season.
Okay.
July, August, and the first part of September, there usually aren't a lot of races to choose from just because it's so hot.
Okay.
And that goes for 5Ks, 10K. That's pretty much everything. I mean, if you look hard enough, or if you're willing to travel, you can still find races during that time.
Okay.
And Andy's not on this call, but I've heard that if you look and are willing to drive places during COVID, you can find races to participate in. Andy has done 5 or 6 triathlons in the last 5 or 6 weeks, I think, which is, I mean, I wish we had done it too, but I mean, that's a lot of travel and a lot of logistics and a lot of faith in things not getting canceled, which I'm having a hard time with right now. So yes, back to your question.
Okay.
For around here.
Between maybe March or April and then October, something like that.
Yeah.
So from about March to probably about May. And then we'll have a couple of races, like Patrick said, in June and July, and then it'll start back up in August, and we'll race through November up here. But if you want to go even farther into South Florida, they'll race through, like, the beginning of December is the Key West Triathlon and Daytona Challenge. So they'll race a little bit longer down there, but it's usually significantly south.
Okay.
And in the past, there've been like races in Naples and Sarasota that are happening in January and February and things like that.
Okay, thanks.
Are you planning your 2021 season, or are you just trying to find something now?
So this is all brand new to me, so I was hoping to do something local first for the first one. So we'll see. And then, excuse me, I wondered, would I need to invest in a wetsuit with this region of the country, or not necessarily?
Oh, you're gonna get differing opinions on this call, because
really?
I hate wearing a wetsuit in any conditions. My recommendation, Teresa, did you just raise your hand?
I did.
Okay. All right. Well, let me get done with my spiel first. For this area, if you're planning on competing in our area, I think that you would probably be best served with a sleeveless wetsuit. Because you're not going to need to use it past March, April, past like April here. and you may or may not need it in during Santa Rosa Island Tri. The benefits of the wetsuit are going to be warmth and buoyancy, and a little bit of speed. So if you're super competitive, and you're at the top level of your age group, or even past your age group, those extra seconds can help in a wetsuit.
Okay.
Personally, for me, it's too constricting, and it is not worth those benefits to me. So that's my spiel. Teresa?
Thanks.
So, I mean, I was pretty much going to say the same thing. You probably, if you race frequently in our area, you would probably use it maybe 2-3 times a year as far as events, maybe twice a year. But if you wanted to go to other areas, or you wanted to like lake swim, then you'd use it more. Or if you want to train open water earlier, so like Pensacola Tri is middle of April, end of April.
End of April.
So if you want to get open water in, you kind of have to start swimming like early April to get some open water experience time, which
That's
our
cold.
water can be cold at that point. So and like Patrick said, it's all about comfort, because if you're going to come out of the water and you're going to be absolutely miserably shivering, then the wetsuit's well worth it, because you're not going to burn that energy by keeping your body a little bit warmer. So it's kind of also that personal piece. But if you get a wetsuit and you want to swim a race in the wetsuit, practice in the wetsuit.
Okay.
I see a lot of people who show up on race day and they're like, oh, this is my first time putting on my wetsuit. And I just shake my head, because I'm like, you're about to have the most miserable swim of your life.
Okay.
Wetsuits are a little bit challenging. Just different buoyancy, where your feet's going to be, where your arms are going to be, how they're going to move. Like Patrick, I would also suggest a sleeveless. But I don't like shoulder constriction. So like, that's my big thing. I would rather be a little bit cold on my arms than have my shoulders held down with a wetsuit. Other people are like full wetsuit, full on all the time. Mindy, who is the race director for Santa Rosa, if she can put on a wetsuit, if it's 200 yards or 2,000 yards, Mindy's putting on a wetsuit, no matter what. Like, that's just her thing. So I did put in there, wetsuit legal for use at races is any time that the water is below 78 degrees.
Okay.
So that gives you kind of a point where you would know. You can watch, I look at NOAA water temp, NOAA, to find out what the water is going to be like and what the water conditions are going to be. If it's ocean or Gulf, lakes, you have to look up individually.
Okay. And the wetsuit has to stay within a certain thickness or something like that?
3 to 5 millimeter.
Okay.
I thought it was, is it 3? Are you sure about 3 to 5?
I will look it up.
If it's a triathlon intended wetsuit, so the big brands are going to be Orca, Blue 70, Zone 3, Xterra. I'm missing something. Roca. All of those are going to be legal for any USAT sanctioned race. Where you get into issues is if you're trying to do a triathlon in an older surf wetsuit that's going to be thicker. And that's going to do you a disservice, because surf wetsuits aren't as flexible as triathlon wetsuits. And they're also not as
5 millimeter.
Okay. They're also, the surf wetsuits are also not as aerodynamic, I guess. If you look at triathlon wetsuits, they kind of finish a real slick. It reminds me of a dolphin. Like, you look at it and it just looks smooth. Whereas if you look at a scuba or a swimming or surfing wetsuit, it doesn't have that final smoothness. It's just the naked, raw neoprene.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Teresa or Valerie, do you want to throw in your 2 cents?
I personally don't like a wetsuit. I've only worn one for one race, and but I'm hot natured, so I get hot really easily. I can warm up really quick in cold water, so that doesn't bother me. Also, I have a lot of extra fluff, so I don't need the buoyancy as much as somebody who's more muscular. So me personally, I'm kind of like Patrick. I would avoid a wetsuit. It's not for me, but most people do like wetsuits. So I think Patrick and I are more on the smaller side of the numbers. That's just me.
And I actually have a temperature that I know for a fact that unless the water is colder than 65 degrees, I won't put on a wetsuit. So that's not a lot of people. So, I'm curious, Lisa, have you been training in a wetsuit, or you're still thinking about buying one? So you don't have one right now?
I was just curious if I would need one if I did local tries, or even in the region if I ended up traveling around for it. So I do not have a tri wetsuit. No, just enjoying the summer swimming.
And you might be able to, since you're potentially only looking for it, a couple times a year, you may even be able to borrow one, because there are triathletes out there who have multiples. What? You're shaking your head like you don't have multiples. And they,
what are you talking about?
They'll most likely loan them to you. And that's a good way to test fit, or even test against brands. Teresa Clark, did you have anything you wanted to throw in about the wetsuit?
Depending on the water temperature, I usually would wear one because I don't like to be that cold in the water. Mine is sleeveless, but I am very comfortable in the water swimming, period. So I find it sometimes it raises me up too high in the water. If I want to try to do a breaststroke kick to check something, my feet are up way too high. So it has its advantages and disadvantages. But what you need to learn how to do is how to put it on and off, and the off more than the on. You have more time to put it on than you do in a race to take it off. So, but I don't know exactly what size you are, but if you'd like to try a wetsuit to see, if you'd be interested, mine's a medium, I believe, and I'd be more than happy to lend it to you to try it to swim.
All right, thank you.
And a lot of times we have a group, TGC trains, and I see people on there all the time who are starting their season and are just like, I want to try out a wetsuit because I know I'm going to do a cold water race. And just like Teresa said, they, people offer it up and say, hey, I'll meet you out at the beach and you can try this one on. If I will caution you, if you're going to try on a wetsuit during the hot months, be very efficient at get it on and get into the water, because you're going to overheat really, really quickly. So just kind of be aware, because again, it makes you kind of uncomfortable. And Tri-Glide is your friend. So I use Tri-Glide. It's a spray that you can put on like the rub spots where you're going to get a little bit of rubbing from the wetsuit. And in case anybody wants to know, I'm not in a disco. Patrick is having fun with our Google sourced lights and changing the color of my lighting in the room that I'm in our house.
I don't know what you're talking about. Mike, do you have any experience with wetsuits?
None at all.
Okay. Any other discussion about wetsuits, Lisa? Any other questions?
Oh no, that was it.
So one of the other things that you should look at and consider is what they call buoyancy shorts, and it's pretty much just the don't shake your head. It gives you the buoyancy of a wetsuit, so it keeps your butt up in the air, but it's just like a pair of board shorts. If you're not necessarily concerned about the warmth aspect, that can be a good alternative. There are people in the club who will relentlessly make fun of you for it, but they do it in jest. And none of those people are here, but I do know that those people are in the club. So they rib each other about it. But it is a good option if that's something that appeals to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, that was a great question. What else you guys got? All right, well, I will go to the messenger. Jason wanted us to talk a little bit about carb loading. So what carb loading is, if you guys don't know, it's inundating yourself with simple carbohydrates the evening before a race. So what that typically translates to is, for the big races, a pasta dinner or pizza, I guess, something big and bready. There are pros and cons to that kind of plan of attack for your nutrition. If you're going to carb load before a race, you should be carb loading before your big training days so that you know how your stomach is going to handle that massive amount of carbs. So if you've not carb loaded for your entire training season and you decide, hey, I'm gonna try it for this race, and you go to your spaghetti dinner the day before your Olympic or whatever, you have a good chance of it landing you in a porta potty along the route. So consider that. There are a lot of people that do it, and the science behind it is that your body breaks down carbs faster, and your body uses those carbs faster. So during the race, if you load up on those carbs, you have an abundance of energy to expel during the race. It's supposed to keep you from hitting the wall and keeping you strong throughout the race. But there is a science to it, and it is something that you should practice. I did keto for a year, so I went carb free, and I did well on that, which is the absolute opposite of carb loading. So different approaches work for different people, and it's something that you should definitely experiment with, not on race day. Teresa, did you want to add something? Teresa?
Well, what I've heard with carb loading to benefit too is don't sit down and have like the biggest fettuccine alfredo dinner that you could possibly have the night before, but build it up during the week. So you kind of start building in your carbs, and that way your body's storing it a little bit more. So if you're just putting it into your stomach and then your stomach's having to process it real quick, you might get a burst, but you're not going to get something that's a little bit more lasting. So I've always kind of heard, build it up like 2 days before. And then also you're not sitting on like that, again, that whole big fettuccine alfredo just kind of sitting in your stomach, or pizza or whatever you want to have, baked potatoes, whatever. And hydration should be the same thing. So kick up your hydration. A lot of people are like, oh, it's day before race, let me kick up my hydration. You should have been kicking up your hydration 4 and 5 days. So if you're going to race on Saturday, I would say like Monday, start just adding a little bit more hydration, a little bit more electrolytes into your normal pattern would be. That's what my suggestion is that works for me, that has made me the most successful. And I, as far as hydration, spent a whole lot of time just of my life, let alone my racing life, being dehydrated. And I really have noticed the difference when I build up my hydration. And then I have alarms and alerts during my races to remind me to hydrate. So it's definitely a help for me.
So you mentioned hydration. So I would like to just spend a couple minutes on that, because that's something that we don't necessarily talk a lot about. Hydration, you should be practicing your hydration during your training. So like all things that we do, you need to start that early. You should experiment with a couple different options for hydration. The bare bones is water, and then you've got the mass-produced stuff like Gatorade, Powerade, things like that. Teresa, I know for big races, or Teresa and I both use Pedialyte, which is thick but efficient. And I say thick because I don't know if you've ever tried Pedialyte. It's a very unique texture when you're just drinking it for hydration.
Like a light syrup.
Yeah. I mean, it's silky almost. It's weird. I can't drink as much of it as Teresa can. But she also doesn't drink Powerade during a race, whereas I'll drink Powerade. So there are other things that people use that's more specialized. Tailwind is a big one. Infinite is one that you can cater to your needs if you want more caffeine versus more carbs. Excuse me, that sort of thing. What's the stuff that we've been using this season? Scratch. Yeah, Scratch. We like it. We used it with TGC last season. That was our official hydration of the season, and it's a very, very good product in my opinion. But there's so many products out there, and there's a lot of options. Have you guys been experimenting with hydration this season? Okay, good. I like the head nods of yes. Good. What are you guys using?
I've tried the Noon tablets. I guess extra electrolytes, and that's it.
You know, Noon, for whatever reason, I never think about Noon. We've got a friend who's a hardcore Noon user and an ambassador for the product. Every time we hang out with them, that's all we drink, and we enjoy it. And then for whatever reason, whenever we get home, we completely forget about it. But yeah, that's a good one. Teresa Clark, what are you using?
I use Noon,
Oh.
and I use water. I'm experimenting more now with the biking and so forth, adding nutrition as I'm riding. So I do blocks, I do jelly beans, I do potatoes and salt, and I heard paydays. I'm trying paydays as my little treat, and pretzel bites, soft pretzel bites.
Nice. We'll talk more about nutrition in a minute. I've got a nutrition story that I love to tell. So, Mike, what are you using for hydration right now?
Right now, I'm using these powder packs. We started using them when we were hiking the Appalachian Trail, and they're just electrolytes. There's no carbs. There's nothing else to add to water because I don't need any additional carb. I manage those carefully. So I'm using those in my water bottles, and mainly that in water.
Do you know the name of the product?
I think it's called a Squincher pack.
Okay.
I get them in bulk on Amazon.
Huh. Okay. Valerie, what about you? I know you are known for your 2 handheld bottles at any given race.
Yeah, I have one bottle that has water in it and one that has my electrolytes. I've started using Cerasport. It's a rice-based electrolyte powder, and then I add just a little bit of the Gatorade endurance powder because it's got a little bit more salt and potassium. And then I also use salt stick fast chews. Since I have gastric bypass, I have issues with absorbing stuff, so I have to have things that are absorbed very easily. And then I use the water either to balance out so that I'm not getting total electrolytes the whole race, but I also use the water to cool down. If I get too hot, I can just pour some of the water on me and cool myself down. So it has 2 functions for me carrying the water because I overheat very easily. So, but yeah, I'm loving the Cerasport. It seems to do well with my stomach and my energy and everything.
Nice. Go for it. Teresa?
Yeah, I wanted to say that if I know I'm going to be exercising or doing a lot in the heat, I do the salt tablets. I take 2 the night before and then 2 the day of, just to help with the electrolytes and so forth. Because I know, especially recently, it's been even early morning when I get off that bike, it's kind of different. I'm dripping and I'm not used to all that sweat. So I try to make sure I supplement before.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, I mean, we installed a new washing machine this afternoon, and just wheeling it around on a cart from the front yard to the backyard, I felt like I had run a sprint triathlon with the amount that I was sweating. So part of that's because of our athletic hygiene right now with me being on the couch so long. But the other part is that it feels like it's 300 degrees outside. So there is that. So we touched a little bit on nutrition, and Teresa actually listed off a whole bunch of the options that Teresa and I use, or that yes, there's multiple Teresas on this call. So you mentioned paydays, and payday is awesome because it's sweet and it's chewy, and it doesn't melt as much as like candy bar would or whatever. I was against paydays for our first couple long triathlons. My first attempt at an Ironman, I don't think I had paydays with me, and I was feeling it so much that I stopped at a aid station to use the restroom. I think my second lap of a bike, and I came out of the porta potty, and this chick is sitting there chowing down on these fun-sized Snickers bars, and I nearly knocked her down and stole her Snickers bar. I was so hungry, and those looked so good, and I engaged in a conversation with her, like, you know, I will give you anything you want right now to share one of those Snicker bars. What can I trade you? What can I do? Please share. I could use it. And she looked at me and said, well, you should have planned better. And she hopped on her bike and left. I know.
Oh, no.
It was funny in the moment, because I was like, well, I guess, you know, she's not going to give me her melted chocolate bar, but yeah, to tell me that I planned poorly and then leave. Yeah, memories. And that was not my wife. That was a complete stranger. Teresa would have at least given me a bite of her payday had she been there. But yeah, you mentioned paydays. You mentioned the potatoes. I think Dom has also recommended using. Do you put butter on your potatoes? No, yeah, you should. So what we used to do is we would boil them and put pads of butter in with them, and then sprinkle like base salt on them. So
Yeah, I put salt.
yeah, and
I have tried.
the secret to the potatoes is that it's just pure carbs. So on a long hot bicycle day, you can literally put them in a plastic baggie in your back pocket, and the sun will heat them up. So when you're ready to eat them, you can just start going, oh, I could use some potatoes.
You just have to be prepared that you're going to wipe your hands on your bike shorts or whatever shorts you're wearing. So, you know, OxyClean kind of stuff is really great to have. The other thing that we started putting on ours, because sometimes butter can be kind of a intestinal irritant, is we started putting avocado, which avocado also gives you that fat. Don't make questionable faces at me. You've eaten them.
I've never had avocado in my potatoes.
Yeah, you have. So, but sometimes, again, it gives you, the whole point of the butter is to have that fat. And so the whole point of the avocado is to get you that extra fat to it. And it kind of acts the same way. So, but they're red potatoes too. So they're usually like the little red potatoes or the fingerling potatoes. So you're not talking about like a russet, like Idaho potatoes. Because that was honestly my first question. And so I know it sounds, and maybe everybody here already knew this.
No, I did not.
But I was like, because Dom was the one who, I think one of the first people who told me, and then a couple of other friends of ours was like, oh yeah, potatoes, you know, so great. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, how am I going to get a baked potato on the bike? Like, because it just didn't make sense to me that there were smaller potato options. So yeah, it's the little red new potatoes, and I cut them into fourths. And that's how I boil them. And then, like Patrick said, after they're boiled, cooled down a little bit, just throw them in the bag, toss them with either butter or, like I said, avocado, and a little bit of salt, and put them in your bag, take them out of the fridge in the morning, and have them in your bike gear whenever you're going on either that long bike ride or long racing. For long racing, your bike is your food consumption time. So making sure that you've got food consumption during that time is the easiest time to take in calories building up to the run. You don't need it necessarily on a sprint. Sometimes you might need it on an Olympic. But mostly like potatoes and stuff we use for anything longer.
And a pro tip, if you have traveled to your destination race and you have decided that you want to take potatoes on your long bike ride, and you prepare them by boiling them and prepping them, do not put them on the very top shelf of your hotel refrigerator, because frozen potatoes the morning of the race do not thaw, or frozen cooked potatoes do not thaw out and become edible during the race. Those were probably the avocado ones that I allegedly have had in the past.
Yeah, so so on these long bike rides, so how do you eat? Are you like in the aero bars and just trying to like how do you do that? Or do you just sit up and take a little eating break while you're riding? Or
it takes practice. Are you on a tri bike or are you on a road bike right now?
I'm on a road bike with aero bars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a bento box? The little it mounts right behind the stem of your handlebars.
No, so maybe I need one of those.
Yeah, so that's usually what we'll do is we keep our food there or in the back pocket of our cycling jersey.
Okay.
And then you just get used to either pulling from your back pocket or pulling from your bento box and popping things. You should pre-open the things that you plan to eat during your bike ride because it's possible, but it's not advisable to sit there and try to open stuff to eat. But if it's open and accessible to where you can just pick it up and pop it, then you're pretty much golden. And whether you stay in aero or you sit up in a more comfortable position, it's completely up to you. Teresa, it looks like you were.
Yeah, and everybody's gonna shift to what they want to do, like what makes them more comfortable. I honestly, like, I thought I was going to be comfortable with my bento box, but then I get really nervous because it's a different visual and it takes because I can look at it, I take my eyes off of the road of where I am. And because I have to reach down between me, it makes my arrow a little wonky. So I prefer my back pockets. So even my tri-tops, not just cycling jerseys, I just stuff it all into my back pockets is where I keep all of my food. And then I don't have a whole lot to stuff into my sports bra, so I use that for storage as well. But my potatoes and usually like my blocks and stuff go into the back because I would rather reach behind me and grab than have to do my balance center. It just works better for me.
Okay, thanks.
The key to all that though is practice way beforehand because it gets really wonky and you got to figure out what works for you. And that same thing is with the nutrition. Like I said, I've had gastric bypass, so I'm limited as to what I can have. So for last year when I was training for Ironman Gulf Coast, I was trying all different kinds of things to see what worked for me on the bike versus the run. And it took me a long time to finally figure out what I could tolerate, what I could deal with, and how, whether it's, and I personally like the bento box. I don't want to try and reach behind me and try and find a pocket, and that scares me on the bike. So I was not comfortable doing that. So you just kind of have to practice every time you go out on the bike and see what works best for you.
And I've a lot of people use goos as well, the little goo packs. You see them on runs. They'll tape them to their bike so they can reach down and pop them up and tear them with their teeth and squeeze into their mouth or whatever. I've also talked to people who do plan a little bit of a stop in a long triathlon. So they'll, say a full distance, they'll push out their first 56 miles, stop for a 5-minute break so that they can eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or Uncrustable or whatever, and then hop back on the bike and do their other 56. So when you start doing the longer distances, the options, are almost limitless, depending on what your goals are. So I wouldn't advise taking a break midway through a sprint unless you just want to. I mean, Danica the last few seasons, Mere Mortals chair, started doing yoga during the middle of her marathons and actually shaved significant time off of her marathon times because she took those few minutes to stop and recenter and stretch and do a couple poses before she finished up. So there's a lot of options.
Yeah. Good.
So back to the bento box that we were talking about with food. My Teresa is not a fan of bento boxes. I have a bento box on every bike that I own. and I use it for food and for meds and for little packets of chamois cream. So mine stay stuffed. I have a little survival pack pretty much anytime I get on a bike, just in case, because I don't take pride in not finishing a bike. So I tend to pack a little heavy when it comes to supplies so that I have all of the contingencies covered. So that's what I use my bento box for in addition to food.
Mm. Now, Patrick, does TGC continue the Mere Mortals like through the winter, or does it end at the end of this tri-season kind of and then pick up again?
So typically Mere Mortals, the triathlon training program will end end of September, just before the Santa Rosa Island Triathlon. What we typically do between October and April, May, is group activities a couple times a month. As we're getting closer to Pensacola Tri, we'll start doing group activities on that route. So it's not an official Mere Mortal style workout, but we will generally meet down at the Wahoo Stadium and swim in Bruce's Beach and run the bike route and ride the bike route. So so there is some preparation for that particular tri as well.
Okay. And is that a sprint triathlon?
They have both. Pensacola Tri has a sprint option and an Olympic or international option.
Okay, great.
And so the difference is loops pretty much. I guess the swim course is obviously shorter. It's not as big of a triangle, I think, if they use the same course. The bike course for the sprint, you ride from downtown to Summit, up Scenic Highway to Summit. And then the Olympic, you actually ride up to Langley and then back down Spanish Trail around May Garden and down to where Summit intersects Tippin, I think it is, right there by the new Sacred Heart complex that was just built, or Roger Scott.
Oh yeah.
Pool, right in there, and then back. So that's where they get the bike, and then the run. It's a single loop for the sprint downtown and a double loop for the Olympic.
Okay, cool.
So by April of next year, you're going to be raring for an international distance race.
Oh, international.
Well, Olympic, international, yeah.
Sprint.
So I know races have been canceled. All of our local races have officially been canceled. So Santa Rosa Island Tri called it a couple weeks ago. Try the Gulf called it, I think July 24th or something like that. So those were the last two in our immediate area. Is anybody on the call signed up for anything this year?
I'm doing Cultivation Nation this weekend.
Okay, it's Cultivate. Is that Meridian or Wiggins? Which one is that?
Wiggins.
Okay, Wiggins. So that's in Mississippi.
South Mississippi.
All right. Mike, what was that?
South Mississippi, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? I know Jason, since he's kind of getting on, he's considering Challenge Daytona, which has, do they have a sprint or do they just have the Olympic and the half, Teresa?
They just have a half and a sprint, and then aqua bikes and stuff like that. I'm doing the sprint.
Oh, okay. They don't have an Olympic?
Yep.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
No, I thought I'd do the Olympic if they had that, but I'm going to do the sprint. I'm taking my camper. I'm going to camp in the infield and do that one.
You did that one last year too, right?
Yeah, that was my only did not finish. That was the one that I cramped for 6 hours and finally had to give up the ghost.
That was a rough day.
That was a bad day for me. So, but yeah, you know, I persevered as far as I could. I wasn't mad at it. I was at the time,
But now I go, you know, I endured quite a bit, and I'm okay with it.
All right, Teresa,
All day.
Lisa, have you guys looked at other race options?
I have not.
Patrick, we're still haven't signed up yet, but we're still looking at Key West.
God, that's Key West is super tempting.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that one last year, and we ended up we had committed to Islamorada half marathon, which was the day after Key West, and we looked at it logistically, and we're very, very, very close to doing the sprint in Key West, and then the beer mile immediately after in Islamorada the same day, and then the half the following day. So we ended up not, because that's just so much to do at once. But yeah, I've wanted to do that one for years.
You should come with us.
What's the distance?
They have
What's the distance on it?
I believe they have a sprint and an Olympic distance in Key West. Yep.
Yep.
The problem is, and I'm going to say this from experience because I wasn't necessarily ready for it for the Islamorada half. It is hot, hot, hot. Even in December, you would think, okay, it's December, you know, how bad can it be? It's bad. I mean, it's not like July up here bad, but it was bad enough that I hit my wall on the half at like 7 miles, and I was trained up for it. Like I went into that one thinking I'm about to PR on this flat out and back course in December, and I made it to, I don't even think I made it to 7 miles. I think I made it to probably the 6.2 mark, and was like, screw this. I want a beer and some shade, neither of which were readily available for 6 more miles. So anyway.
Yeah. And the if you're gonna do Key West, the water is a little bit different than our water. So super, super salty, like super salty. It can be like miserably salty and a lot warmer. So there, and December won't be so bad, but the water's a lot warmer than ours, and the salt just makes the buoyancy different. And if you're an open mouth breather when you swim, you're gonna really feel it going through the water there. Just fair warning.
Oh, my camera zoomed out. Wow, that was embarrassing. Anybody else have any races that they're thinking about doing, or even if you know about races at this point? I think everybody's just looking for options. No. Well, I've heard of a couple in Louisiana. If you're looking for, I don't even remember the distance. One of them's New Roads Festival or something like that in Louisiana. That may be a 70.3. And Teresa, do you remember what the other one was? That's no. All right, you're muted. So I mean, there are races out there still. It's just a matter of getting to them. All right, moving on. What happened to Jason? Jason never materialized, huh? All right.
So New Roads is a sprint on one day and a half marathon on the other day. They also have a duathlon option and an aqua bike option, and they have a super sprint option.
Oh, wow.
And then I can't remember what the other one was, but I just got an email from. Okay, but that's the New Roads Triathlon Festival, and it is September 26th and 27th in False River, Louisiana.
To get to New Roads from Pensacola.
According to Google, it's 289 miles to get to that one from here. So, just for reference. I can't think of what the other one is, and I can't find it in my email right now. But there is another one in Louisiana that's considerably closer than New Roads, but it could be the 70.3. Regardless. What else you guys have? Questions?
Okay, I have a rookie question for you.
Okay.
Another one. So with training, so right now I try to maybe run 2, maybe 3 times a week, swim 2 or 3 times a week, bike maybe twice a week, but and then I try, well, it's maybe just once or twice a week where I do a brick. So what do you recommend? I don't know, this far out, like if we had this try in October, this far out, as far as training, like you take 1 or 2 days off a week for rest? Do you try to do bricks 2 or 3 times a week? Or just curious what you do. I'm just kind of making it up as I learn about it. So
I mean, it's gonna depend on what your goals are. So what are your goals? Are your goals to finish or your goals to podium?
Since I've never done a triathlon, it is just to finish, do the best I can, and that would be it for the first one. Yes. So
my Teresa will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd say that what you're doing is what we were doing for pretty much any 70.3 or full that we trained for. If not, you're doing it better than we did, because I can't remember us doing a whole hell of a lot of bricks, let alone doing bricks consistently. As you get closer to the race, there is definitely a I can't think of what's the term that I'm looking for, Teresa or Mike, where you stop training. Tapering.
You don't stop training, you taper.
Taper. Yeah. Okay. So you start scaling back your intensity and your distances, so that you're well rested and healed for the race. So that's when you would start taking an extra recovery day or dropping back your miles. The only thing that you mentioned in what you're doing that I would probably think about adding, and take our advice with a grain of salt, because we're not coaches, and our goals, and I'm speaking for me and Teresa, have never been really to podium. So we've just kind of doing it for fun or whatever. But scale back on your intensity. I got all screwed up. I was going to tell you that you should think about incorporating strength and speed work into your training. So the speed work is just going to be doing like hill repeat sprints, interval, where you're just pushing as hard as you can for a set amount of time or a short distance, and then letting your heart rate drop back down and then doing it again, pretty much to exhaustion. So what that does, as I understand it, is you're training the different types of muscle. You've got slow twitch muscles and fast twitch muscles. So when you're training endurance, you're training the slow twitch muscles. Okay. So if you're going long and slow, you're training that type of muscle fiber. Whereas if you're sprinting with intervals, sprinting and then resting and sprinting and resting, you're training those fast twitch muscles, and that's what's going to help you get faster.
Okay, and I do that with running, but I guess with swimming and biking, do that for those events as well, I guess?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it's the same principle.
Okay.
And with the cycling, you want to look at cadence. You want to make sure your cadence is high. Just like running, I mean, you want your run cadence to be high. And I guess, Teresa, with swimming, you want your stroke rate to be fast. Is that how that works? Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Your turnover.
Right.
But so like Patrick said, there's different ways to do different things. So I just posted just through Active, they actually have a really good just kind of top books for triathletes, and some of these are more inspirational books, and then some of them is more training books. Some of them are long race, some of them are short race. USAT has a book that kind of lays out training plans. The important thing, like what was said, is really building in that strength training, and we didn't build in strength training for the longest time. It was kind of, I'm running, I'm swimming, I'm biking,
I'm doing them together in combination. I'm doing them separately. I'm trying to do intervals sometimes when I do them. And it was just like, where the heck do I put strength training? And then we spent about a year doing a lot of strength training, and just the differences of how our bodies felt when we would go out and run or go out and swim, and the power that then we had behind that pedal stroke, or the power that we had with our swim stroke, was a lot different. So if you can work in strength training and starting small, you don't have to do anything major, but just a little bit of that, you know, as you go.
And now's as good an opportunity as any to point out that we have some really great sponsors who know a lot more about that strength training component than what we do. Alpha Omega Fitness, coaches Dom and Helen, and even Running Wild to an extent can help you with run-based strength training, or Alpha Omega with weight training or CrossFit, and Dom and Helen just with strength training tailored to you and your triathlon goals. So the resources are out there.
Sounds good.
All right, so we were talking a little bit about tapering. So one of Jason's other questions was, what should your training look like the week of a triathlon? And I'll admittedly disclaimer this with, I am the wrong person to ask, because if it's the week of triathlon, I'm drinking beer and eating whatever I want because I'm about to do a triathlon. That's not necessarily the best thing that you can do. But you definitely want to be in a taper, so you shouldn't be doing the sprinting or any of the heavy strength work, but you want to be active enough that you're still kind of getting your heart rate up and you're staying loose and relaxed. But at that point, your focus shouldn't be on gains, because if you put in the training beforehand like you should, there's nothing that you're going to do in that last week that's going to make a difference besides overdoing it and injuring yourself. Does anybody else want to add in some words of wisdom there?
So, well, I just made a comment that for me, like, tapering week is just muscle memory workout. So nice and easy, just, okay, yeah, my body remembers how to run, my body remembers how to bike, and it's probably, you know, taking it down at least like 30% of what you're pushing. So again, you're not pushing your hardest, you're not trying to make your fastest 5K ever in that week. So you're just taking it a little bit easy, but you don't want to completely like have this week where your body's like, oh, we're giving up exercising, cool, no problem. And you get to race day and it's like, oh wait, you want me to do what?
That's literally what my body says to me every race week.
Yeah, you want me to do what? Oh, good morning.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's better just to kind of have like a little bit going on. But again, you're not pushing huge distances, but just that practice of, okay, I've gone out. So you kind of have like more casual time. You know, nothing above what I can't just kind of talk through casually. So not hard deep breathing cycling. So I want to be able to have a casual conversation when doing it. Now that's different for everybody, because I've ridden with people who can have a casual conversation when they're going 30 miles an hour, and I'm like, I'm gonna die today. So those aren't my people to have riding with me on my taper week, because they don't have the same standards as I do. But again, for me, it's just kind of reminding my body of what it does.
So while we're talking about race week or taper week, I also want to point out that you should also consider having your bike looked at by a mechanic before your big race. Typically, you're going to want to get it into them 2 or 3 weeks before the race and ride on it a couple times before the race, just to make sure everything's how it needs to be and it's functioning correctly. I've done it both ways, and dropping it off at the mechanic is the way to go, even if you're working on your own stuff, because I work on my own stuff, and that has bitten me multiple times with multiple flats. During our last year's trip to the Keys for that half marathon, we actually bookended the vacation with the half marathon on one weekend and then Challenge Daytona on the second weekend. And I had my bike in the shop a week before we left, maybe days, with new cables and everything. And I didn't ride it until we were halfway across Alligator Alley, to which we discovered that the handlebar tape needed to be tighter, and the shift cables were new and had stretched and needed to be readjusted. So it was not necessarily the best thing to do. We've also done long rides where I didn't take it in to have it looked at, and I ended up with a flat tire on one day, and that resulted in a tire replaced. And then the very next day, the rear tire blew as well. So the words of wisdom are take your bike into a mechanic and have them fix everything so that you're not stranded on a race course.
And ride your bike after they do it.
Yeah,
that's amount of time.
Yeah. Because what was the comment we got? Well, how come he didn't notice that the cables were loose? Oh, well, he didn't ride it. You know, he picked it up and it sat in the car for like 3 days, and then we went to the Keys, and then he got on it and realized that he was screwed. So, yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, our bike shops will call you out when you do stupid things. they let you remember.
All right. Any other I don't know, pre-race advice or pre-race questions? I used to do a couple shots of tequila the night before a race. I always enjoyed it. Teresa never thought it was a good idea. I don't remember it ever. Well, what? Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, when he started doing this, as odd as it is, and I can't do it, and I'm like, don't try this at home kind of thing. But he started doing that, and he slept better the night before a race, and he was like muscularly more relaxed going into race day. So tequila worked for him. A couple of people we know like have a beer or, you know, have a drink or whatever for the same purposes of just helping you to sleep, being a little bit more relaxed. Because usually, especially if you're not sleeping at home, so if it's not a local race and you're having to go someplace, it might not be as comfortable like in your hotel room or whatever it is. So, yeah, I can't do it.
My theory too with the beer, since you brought that up, is that is an alternative form of carb loading, which works for me as well. I typically will do 2 or 3 beers the night before a long run, and I'm typically less cramped and less sore during the race. So, is it the alcohol? Most likely.
Is that a Mick Ultra or Guinness?
It's
He
actually
doesn't drink real beer.
It's actually neither.
It's a girl beer.
That's not entirely true. We were going a couple years back. We were hanging out at the Pensacola Bay Brewery more than what we do now, and we would go on Friday night and have 2 or 3 pints. And I was probably drinking Riptides, so not Mick Ultras, but not, you know, Guinness, but not
right.
You know, just middle of the road beer.
Yeah.
I felt better. So I was a lot more fun to be around on race morning, that's for sure. Because I wasn't stressed, not because I was hungover or anything, but because I was more relaxed. You're muted.
I know you're ending this conversation, but it's been brought up on a couple of other conversations, is even if you're not a list person, having a list. So and I still have a list. Now, most of it I can memorize, but I still have a list that I go through, whether it's a sprint or a full distance. Knowing, like, having that list and making sure you pack those things. So for me, I lay out my stuff: swim, T1, bike, T2, run, and just kind of how things are gonna lay themselves out in the race day. And I just make sure, and I kind of go through in my head, transitioning. Okay, do I have my bike helmet that's actually gonna go on my head? Do I have my bike shoes that are gonna go on my feet? But list, and making sure that you're checking those things off. And when you check them off, you're putting them in your bag. So if you, let's say your race is on Saturday, but on Friday, you're going to go out for a run, but you packed your bag on Thursday night, and Friday morning, you're going to do like your last run, then you're not checking off that list your run shoes. So that on Friday night, when you go back through, you look at it and you're like, okay, run shoes isn't checked off. Let me go grab those. So you don't think that you have something that you don't have, because it's not fun to either run barefoot when you've never run barefoot, or to bike on clipped-in pedals when you don't have your clip-in shoes.
That happened to me 2 weeks ago on a 16-mile ride. I was sure that my bike shoes were in my tri bag, where they had been for months, essentially. And I had completely forgot that we went on a little long weekend where we planned to only run, and I repacked my tri bag with just run stuff. So I rode my 16-mile ride in my running shoes without my clips, and it was miserable. So don't do that. I'm trying to pull up, we actually have a TGC branded checklist that former President John Fitzgerald put together. So if I can come up with that here in a minute, I will post it to the chat, and I'll also post it when we put the recording of this video up. What else do we have to talk about tonight? Are there any other questions? Let's go with that.
I have a last question.
Sure. As many as you need.
Thanks. So just my last question is there a certain transition amount of time to aim for? Like, what's a good transition time? What's too long? Or is it different for everybody?
Hey, Patrick, what's too long?
Anything above, well,
anything above peanut butter sandwich.
Depends on your distance.
Yeah,
But,
it does.
Okay.
If
For
you're
a sprint triathlon.
I've been made fun of relentlessly for 10 years because I took like I did not take 10 minutes in a sprint. I took 10 minutes in a half. But I did like take 5 or 6 or 7 minutes in Grandman, which is over in Fairhope, one year, because we had just started doing triathlon. We didn't have like tri kits, which we do now. So I was swimming in jammers, and then I would get out of the water and put on cycling shorts and a cycling jersey, and literally eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and drink a chocolate milk and sit on my Home Depot bucket and relax for a couple of minutes because I was so happy that I didn't die in the swim. And then I would just mosey. That's the best way I could put it. I would just mosey my ass out of transition and suffer my way through the bike before I would suffer my way through the run. So for comparison, my sprint T2 has gone down from like at max maybe 8 minutes to under a minute. So it's possible, and your goal should be as fast as you possibly can, safely and comfortably for whatever type of race you want to have. So for your first triathlon, if you're just wanting to get through it and you want to take a couple minutes to calm down after the swim, do it. I mean, it's your race. Take however much time you need or want. I mean, screw the naysayers. They don't know what they're missing without their chocolate milk and their peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But that's my 2 cents. Teresa, would you like to put another perspective on it?
I would say time yourself now. So set up your area and time yourself just doing it naturally. And then if you want to aim for a good time, I would say to start chipping like 15 seconds off of that. Because like Patrick said, I mean, in a sprint, we've gotten to the point, well, and this is partially competitive, of like we won't put socks on anymore. So we don't. So
because we want to beat because we want to know what it takes to beat each other.
Right.
So
it's just competitive between the two of us, not competitive with our age groups by any means. But so like we don't put socks on. So that took 5 seconds away from, you know, that transition. The way you set up your transition is going to be faster if you set it up like in a way that makes sense. And Patrick will post some photos and things. And I think in Dom's transition video that we did recently, that he did recently, it kind of shows like how to space things out. But I would say a couple of minutes is probably a couple of minutes or less is where most people kind of hang out in transition. It all depends on what you have to do in there. And that's one of the things that I had to realize with me is like my T2 is always going to be long. I have to put a knee brace on during that time, which isn't always easy when you're sweaty and nasty and you've been in salt water and all these other things. So I know I'm going to give up time in T2. Now I can be more efficient at it and I can set things up to where I'm most effective, but I know I'm always going to have that time. Like there's nothing that's going to make that go away. So also look at what for you have to do in that time and then make that the most efficient that you can do. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good.
So, but I would say if you can get under a couple of minutes, good. You'd be good.
As somebody who just recently completed his first, I'll say the most important thing I found was just make sure you know what you need to do to transition successfully, and don't worry about time, because in fact we did that transition workshop there with Dom, and I think I transitioned it at like a minute 30, a minute 40. I was feeling great about that. And then race morning, nothing is as you expect it to be. And so I came out of that water and I needed a minute to kind of collect myself. There's that adrenaline dump, everything else. And so the most important thing is make sure that you get what you need and you drop what you don't need, and you do all of those things in order, and don't worry about the time. The first one, get through the experience, you know. And for me, the idea was kind of an RPE approach to it, you know. So just kind of keeping up my intensity, don't lag, but don't worry about the time. Get through it, but get everything done, and as quickly as possible, then transition to the bike.
Sounds good.
And I can tell you, I am a slow T1 transition because I have toe socks. I get out of the tri-kit shirt and put on a tank top. I don't care about time on that one. I'm just getting my stuff, getting ready for the bike. And my faster time is when I go to the run, because it's just change shoes, grab my fluids and stuff, and I'm gone. So, but I'm not trying to podium. If I get on the podium, it's a bonus. You know, I'm just trying to finish and have a good time. So for me, I don't care if I take a little bit longer. So, yep.
It's one more thing to definitely practice.
Right, yeah.
When you're doing your bricks as much as you can, one of the things that Patrick and I do is we do our brick, well, I do, I don't know how much he does it. If I'm going from the bike to the run, I set up my run shoes and everything inside our car, kind of similar to what it would look like for race day. Not necessarily for speed purposes, because I got to put my bike up and I got to do all this other stuff.
I've
but
never
for the
seen you
purpose
do that. And we train together.
It's always like that in the back seat.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
So I set mine up and I have like my little pile, and it just kind of teaches me how to be most efficient when I'm taking something off or taking something on. Like Mike said, but so I have, and thankfully I don't think there's any photos of it, but I have been one of those people who has left my speed suit on when I was getting onto the bike from the swim. And I've been one of those people who left my helmet on and tried to run out of T2 with it on onto the run course and had to be told to go back. So you do this long enough, you're going to have those experiences too, where you're like, oh, thank goodness somebody didn't take a picture of me running with my helmet on.
I've left T2 wearing cycling shorts before we switched to tri-suits. Mike brought up a very good point about determine what you need and kind of get rid of the rest of the stuff. I know when we started, we joked about my sandwich and my chocolate milk, which are, that's fact. But in addition to that, I would have like a stick of Body Glide, some Vaseline, some Band-Aids, some baby powder, and all that crap was literally like lined up and stuffed in shoes and around shoes. so that I could use it if I needed it. And, you know, you slowly, as you realize that you don't need all that stuff, or you realize you can put that stuff on before a race or whatever, you can start eliminating that and get more efficient. So it looks like we lost somebody.
What I've done as far as transitions is actually practice at home. Use my garage to hold my bike. So I'll set up a transition area and run up the driveway like I'm finishing the swim, do my bike.
Where did you go? Do you have the Teresa Clark? Yeah, you should absolutely be. There you are.
Yeah, I practice at home, so I'll do bike then run and do it again. Every time you lay everything out like it is a race. So that's another way you can practice the transitions before the actual race.
Great idea.
And during a conventional season, transition practice is something that we would do at a couple sessions during the summer. We would do a live demonstration and have you guys actually practice that. And then as the season progresses, we would encourage you guys to practice that each time you're doing whatever workout we have on the beach. So that's something to consider for next season. But yeah, until then, set it up in your driveway, set it up in the back of your car or whatever, and give it a go.
Great.
All right. Any other questions? We're at 15 past 8, so we're running a little long. That's not a problem for me. We can host as long as you guys want to keep talking. But I am running out of topics as far as what I had prepared. So if there are any other questions or topics that you guys want to talk about, now would be the time to throw those out. That's what we're here for. All right. Well, my wife is doing laundry, it looks like, since she has bailed on the call and has appeared behind me. I appreciate you guys coming to tonight's meeting. It was a very easy discussion to have, and I appreciate the participation and the questions.
All right.
We'll do it again in 2 weeks.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right, sounds good. Thank
All right.
you. Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.